Hi, I'm Jan, the pagan prepper. So why is it that I prep? And I know a lot of people have commented on the amount of food that I'm prepping with, and I've even had somebody tell me to stop buying any because I've got too much. But I think it would serve us all well to put all this prepping that we're doing now in the context of history. It's 38 years ago, right at this time of year, that we were all singing "Feed the World, Don't They Know It's Christmas." That was for a famine that was happening in Ethiopia, sub-Saharan Africa. So far removed from us that we don't have to worry about famines like that here. That's never going to happen here. My mum and dad, had they lived, would be 100 next year. And the reason that I'm saying that is to put it into the context of time. Is, 100 years sounds like it could be a long time, but it's actually only a lifetime. It's really not that very long at all. And yet the year before they were born, in Russia there was a massive famine. Conservative estimates say 5 million people died due to starvation or illnesses related to starvation during that famine. And what brought it home to me was when you read about people stripping wallpaper from the walls so that they could get to the fish glue that hung it up, that was pasted up with, to try and get some sort of food and nutrition from that. They were boiling up leather belts. There was even talk about some people having to eat other people. It really kind of brought it home to me that these people are living in ordinary houses, and not so very far in the past. We don't know what's going to happen in our future. Just 50 years before that, closer to home, we had the Irish potato blight and the potato famine that happened there. Ireland's population at that time went down between 20 and 25%, either due to starvation or those that could migrated away from the country. In the 1930s, in America, there was it was a global recession. You had the Great Depression, where you heard of people with the soup kitchens and things, and such poverty that people just couldn't afford to eat. And in the UK, right now, today, there are an estimated 2,500 food banks. That in itself is a frightening figure to me. And I think it's one of those things where a lot of people would think, well, that's for other people. Other people might need that, but thank goodness I won't. Well, I personally have now twice been in a position, for different reasons, where unexpectedly I found myself in a position where if I didn't have my preps, I would have had to go to a food bank. But luckily, because I've always had my store covered, I've been able to look after my family myself. But right now, today, the people that are using the food banks aren't all the unemployed. That's kind of what a lot of us think of it as, but it's actually not. These people are now working full time. They've got good jobs. We've got teachers, we've got nurses, we've got firemen going and having to use food banks because what was a good wage is no longer enough to cover their basic necessities. So we now have the working poor, which is something that I didn't anticipate was ever going to happen. I saw a programme I think it was a few months ago, about a food bank that was delivering to people's houses because not everybody can even get to the food bank. And they were saying that there was one house that they delivered to that it was, £1 million house. But the lady who was living there with her daughters had suddenly lost her income. And yes, she might have a big fancy house, but you can't eat big fancy houses. And even if it's a case of, yes, she'll sell it, it's not something that happens overnight, And once you've liquidated your assets and you've eaten, you've used that money and eaten that food, where do you go from there? I think that we're all perilously close to sudden, unexpected change. And at the moment, we're able to fill our cupboards because the shops still have food in there. But how long is that going to last for? We saw over the past couple of years that sometimes supply chains can get interrupted, and when that happens, the shelves just empty overnight. I remember one time I was on social media and there was a young mum with 5 kids saying that she'd gone to the shop, she wasn't able to get anything because everybody else had got there first. And when it comes to those times when people are rushing to buy the food, and it only takes the slightest thing in the press for that panic to happen, I personally question the validity of the world toilet paper shortage. I can't help but think that was entirely press driven. A kind of a social experiment, if you like, to see what would happen if all of a sudden they started telling us that there's no more toilet paper. Well, what did happen is people would just go out and just clean the shelves of any loo paper that was there. And I saw things during that you just can't believe was possible. In Australia, I saw a news report or a photograph of armed police guarding toilet paper in a supermarket. It just doesn't bear thinking about, does it? And in the UK, we've had not a fuel shortage, but the press driving a fuel shortage, saying that, we can't get the tankers to the stations. So everybody goes out and starts filling their car up with fuel. So it's not necessary that there is an actual shortage for one to suddenly happen. It only takes that flicked switch in people's minds to say, I've got to go and buy it. And how long before we have the next crisis and people will suddenly go out and stock up in the supermarkets? Luckily, we haven't gone into World War III. But if we did, the minute that was announced, I can absolutely guarantee you the shops would be absolutely teeming with people who would be at that point thinking, now I need to stock up. So what I've done for myself and my family is made sure that I'm not going to be part of that circus that goes in and tries to panic buy at the last minute. I've done all our preparations at times of plenty. I've done it when the shops have plenty of stock and when I've had enough money that I can go in and buy it piece by piece, a little bit at a time, building it up gradually. Or even at times of plenty, the first thing that I do when I go shopping, first thing I always turn to is dog food, and when we have the cats, cat food. Make sure the cats and dogs have got enough to eat. Then when I've got their food, then I start looking at our food. I've always kept a really good stock. So when we had the panic buying a few years ago, I actually had a year's worth of dog food already in stock. That's what I feel comfortable with. Although I question at the moment if that is actually enough, because with prices going up the way that they are, and I'm noticing it particularly in dog food, which is shooting up in price. So what I'm buying now is preserving the price for the future for me. you know, in that next year my dogs will be eating food at today's prices. But because we're having all sorts of issues with farming, with raising meat, I think that I can foresee a time when meat becomes much more scarce and much more expensive. In which case, you know, animal food is not going to be the top priority to use that meat for. We're also seeing at the moment incredible increases in fuel prices, whether it's electricity prices or fuel prices, as in petrol prices. That means that pet food manufacturers are being hit just the way the rest of us are, and the only way that they can afford to carry on producing pet food is by putting the prices up. So it means that if I'm going to be able to afford to feed my dogs into the future, I feel I need to have that food in place sooner rather than later. I do the same with Neil and I, and sorry, that was my piece of paper that I was going to refer to for notes. I like to know that I've got enough in the cupboard that I don't have to panic at any given time. I also have my freezers, so I've got good frozen stock. We've just had snow the last couple of days and it's been very cold. Well, I'm lucky, we've got the car, I can get to the shops. I live in an airport town, which means that as soon as the snow comes, the roads we have the gritters and things to clear the roads so that we don't get situations where we can't get to the shops. They do that in here because we're close to the airport. The majority of airport workers live in the town, which means that they have to keep the roads clear in order to keep the staff getting to the airport. So I can get to the shops, but what if I was in a situation where I couldn't get to the shops? You know, if I've got my stock already in my home, then that's one thing that I don't have to worry about, is actually the getting of it, the bringing of it in. And so I can't see how long I've been talking now. I've not got my glasses on, so I can't see the time on the camera. Sorry about that. I was using the app on my phone to operate the camera, and I don't know if oh, it said connections failed, so I don't know how successful this video is going to be. As I say, I was going to film the why I prep in kind of 2 parts anyway, so perhaps I'll call it for that part, and then I'll talk to you again on another video about some of the reasons that I think it is so necessary to get your preparations done sooner rather than later. Anyway, that's for right now, and that's from me, and you can't see, but I don't know if I can tilt the camera down, but no, you won't be able to see. That's Chester on my lap there. I've got a dog fast asleep on my lap. So anyway, take care, stay warm, and keep prepping. Lots of love. Bye.